The Russians sent several tanks and armored vehicles to assault a Ukrainian village, splitting them into small groups. While the armored vehicles with infantry tried to move closer to the landing point, the tanks began shelling Ukrainian fortifications. By splitting their attack directions, the Russians effectively put pressure on the defense with constant shelling, giving the Ukrainian defenders no time to rest. In doing so, they provided cover for the group of armored vehicles, diverting attention toward themselves. Everything is going according to plan. The Russians have the upper hand in this offensive, and after some time, a significant portion of the Ukrainian defensive positions is destroyed. That's more than enough for one of the APC groups to reach the outskirts of the village and begin capturing the remaining Ukrainian positions. Meanwhile, another small group of armored vehicles approaches the village from the opposite side. The APC leading the column hits a mine, but its armor withstands the blast, and it keeps moving forward. Several other vehicles are also on fire, but they've almost reached the drop-off point. Realizing that this battle is practically lost, the Ukrainian soldiers decide to abandon the village and retreat to the next defensive line. This time, luck is not on their side. They gather the wounded and try to quickly leave the combat zone. During the evacuation, the Russians even tried to chase down one of the Ukrainian vehicles with an FPV drone, but they missed. Now that the Ukrainian soldiers have left the strike zone, Ukrainian MLRS systems enter the fight, trying to halt the Russian advance. But it's in vain. Although several armored personnel carriers were hit by shrapnel, it wasn't enough to stop the assault. Thanks to their numerical advantage, tank support, and coordinated attacks from multiple directions, the Russians managed to deliver several groups of soldiers to the settlement, allowing them to take positions and establish a foothold at this location. After entering the settlement, the Russians continue firing at locations where Ukrainian soldiers might still be hiding. The mission can be considered successful. Several groups dismount and begin taking defensive positions among the ruins of the houses. No civilians remain here anymore. The Ukrainians have also withdrawn, and now this village belongs to the Russians. They captured it at a great cost and will hold it for as long as they can. After checking and clearing the area, the soldiers unload weapons, additional ammunition, and equipment and begin fortifying their defensive positions. Russians celebrate their victory by symbolically raising a flag over the roofs of the occupied houses. But the Russian celebrations didn't last long. The soldiers of the 3rd Separate Assault Brigade are loading into the Bradleys and heading out on an important mission. As soon as the vehicle headed toward the enemy, an unexploded shell got caught under the tracks. But the Bradley handled it easily. The crew only felt a light jolt. The gunner sees a Russian APC in the scope, heading straight toward them, attacking Ukrainian Bradley. Bradley opens fire with lethal force. The BTR-82 is being punctured like a can. Watch how it's firing randomly, not even aiming. The gun mechanisms are obviously damaged. The commander's words confirm it. Watch as the soldier jumps out on the move. The APC has been disabled. Those Russian soldiers were lucky. They evacuated just in time before the vehicle caught fire. Meanwhile, the team is almost at their target. The Bradley opens suppressive fire. The Russians are terrified by the Ukrainian assault. The soldiers from the 3rd Brigade are ready for the fight. The Russians are there. Most of the engagements, especially in the woods, happen without seeing the enemy directly. Part of the group breaks away and takes up positions in nearby trenches that the Russians had not yet managed to secure. The sector is now under Ukrainian control. Russian logistics have been disrupted, and the village is now surrounded by Ukrainian forces. The Russians cannot allow their forces to be cut off. Soon, 2 APCs carrying troops appear on the horizon. Another APC have arrived to support the Bradley in holding the position. They start firing at the Russian APCs moving in to try and retake the area. Accurate shots disable the first vehicle, causing the infantry to scatter. One of the Bradleys then fires a tow missile. The counterattack is stopped, and the Russians panic, fleeing from the burning vehicles. The Russian soldiers run for the nearest tree line, reporting that they have failed to establish a foothold on the position. The village is now firmly under Ukrainian control, but the operation is far from over. The second phase begins as infantry-packed APCs move in to clear the area. Just a few days later, the Ukrainians returned to the same location. Only this time, the element of surprise and the advantage were on their side. Under a barrage of attacks, several armored vehicles managed to get close enough to the village to dismount assault troops. The Russian soldiers who were in the tree line are trying to escape the M113's machine gun fire and take cover inside nearby buildings. Ukrainian soldiers dismount from the armored vehicle and, splitting into several groups, begin the assault on the village. Although the Russians captured this village recently, they nevertheless managed to establish several defensive positions throughout the settlement, so driving them out will not be easy. In addition, the Russians have several drone operators providing support, and they're already on their way trying to stop the Ukrainians from advancing any further. Alertness and quick reaction saved the Ukrainians from death. The Russians make a few more drops, but they are unsuccessful as well.
На зв'язку. Продвинулись на один дом. Осматриваемся.
Отстреливаются, да? Да. Отстреливаются.
Був скид, все гуд, все гуд.
Both sides are engaged in intense firefights, but the Ukrainians are slowly managing to push forward. In one of the basements, they hear an ambush being prepared and quickly take action to neutralize the enemy.
Ще одна є. Чув?
Тікай! Давай, пробуємо заходити.
Under the cover of several grenades, the Ukrainian soldiers managed to clear the basement without any casualties on their side. But had they not recognized the trap in time, they could have paid a much higher price.
Ще одну туди, ще одну. Все.
These houses have been cleared, but advancing further will be much more dangerous. The Ukrainians will have to creep forward across essentially open ground, hiding only behind the branches of burned-out trees. Incredible luck. Just a few more meters and there would have been no trace left of the Ukrainian soldier. Several groups of Russians are holed up in the buildings and are holding the defense effectively. They have a very strong position. The Ukrainians can't even see which windows the fire is coming from,
Бігом, бігом, бігом.
So they decide to move forward while covering their advance with fire and grenades as long as possible.
Все, 12 контроль.
For some time, the soldiers have to shoot back blindly. They're not counting on killing anyone, just hoping the enemy will at least reveal their position. The amount of ammunition an assault trooper can carry isn't infinite, and if a war of attrition starts, the Ukrainians will definitely be at a disadvantage.
Давайте вперед, вперед, потихенько. Прикрий.
Тримай, крию.
Getting a little closer, the Ukrainians finally notice some movement in one of the buildings and attempt to strike.
Постріл!
Almost hit, but still not enough to eliminate the enemy.
Проходим, проходим потихеньку, Вася, проходим. Шляпа!
One more try. One more grenade toward the enemy's hideout. The Russians are still alive and unharmed, but this time they've been spotted.
Вони в домі! В домі, п***е!
Now the odds are even. All that remains is to rely on your skills and luck.
Що це, граната? Закидуємо гранатами і бистро в хату! Хату закидати гранатами, блядь! Ой, мені явно не доплачують за цю роботу, нахуй.
The group leader takes a risk and decides to use the last RPG round they have left.
Сука, блядь!
But he misses, and the round hits the ground.
Що, проходить вперед, трохи, хлопці.
As a result, under constant Ukrainian pressure, the Russians gradually began to give up their positions. A significant part of their fortifications was destroyed by the explosions, and with each minute there were fewer and fewer positions from which they could effectively defend.
Проходимо так і за одним!
Step by step, building by building, the Ukrainians were taking their land back. They act in complete coordination and without panic.
Пацани, економте БК! Плюс!
They outflank the enemy from different sides and wait for the right moment to strike.
Відходь!
The operation is extremely difficult, but thanks to precise command and high professional skills, not a single Ukrainian soldier in this group has even been wounded. For the Russians, the situation is becoming critical, and they understand that. The fighters have already reported to their headquarters that without reinforcements they won't be able to hold this position. The Russians are trying to respond as quickly as possible, and the fastest support they can send right now is on motorcycles. They are mobile and have high off-road capability. But they also have one major drawback, a complete lack of armor, and the Ukrainians know this well. Just as they know that an FPV drone can reach speeds no lower than a motorcycle. So several drone pilots take this incoming Russian reinforcement group upon themselves.
Чується ближче до нас.
Meanwhile, the Russians have no idea that the hunt for them has already begun. They are confident that the fields they are crossing to reach their comrades are outside the reach of Ukrainian operators. But this time their reconnaissance made a mistake for which they will have to pay with their lives. Due to the very heavy equipment losses caused by the high effectiveness of FPV drones, the Russians are increasingly neglecting the safety of their soldiers, sending them practically without protection. That is why we are seeing a noticeable rise in the use of motorcycles whenever the weather conditions allow it. This reinforcement will not reach its destination.
Цель 0201А, цель 0201А, по основной.
The Russians opened MLRS fire without even bothering to consider that their own soldiers, who were still holding the defense there, were still alive. Explosions are ringing from all sides. The Russian MLRS Grad is not a precision weapon. Perhaps that is what saved the Ukrainians from a horrific death. Many shells land very close, destroying houses and ripping trees out with fragments. No one knows how many of their own soldiers they ended up killing during this operation. But after these strikes, the number of places where one can defend safely has definitely decreased.
Сюда підтягуйтесь! Проходьте лівіше. Обходьте.
The Russians fire a few more volleys and then quickly leave the launch area. They need to get out of the strike zone before Ukrainian FPV pilots lock onto them.
Давайте, пацани, чим довше сидимо, тим більше, блядь. Йдемо сюди! Обходьте, блядь! Давайтесь, блядь! Будете жить! Пацани, лягайте, я плануту кидай.
The Ukrainians make one last offer for the Russians to surrender. They have practically lost this position already. No reinforcements will be coming. After the shelling stopped, the Ukrainians managed to approach the point from which the fire had been coming. Not a single one survived, but shots can still be heard from the buildings further ahead. The end of the mission is close. Russian artillery still reaches the edge of the settlement, and they mercilessly shell positions where Russian soldiers remain. They don't care about collateral losses. The main goal is to stop the advance of the Ukrainian assault troops.
З контролем! Чіпс, контроль, сука! Не розслабляйтесь, блядь.
Some Russian soldiers somehow managed to survive and hide among the ruins.
Ой, блядь! Ого, блядь!
Under enemy artillery fire, the Ukrainians continue the final clearing operation. Almost no Russian soldiers remain. Most were eliminated in the process, while a few managed to escape.
Праву пристройку візьміть. О, да. Тікай, гранату кину.
Among the buildings destroyed by artillery, someone is still trying to shoot back, but the forces are nowhere near equal.
Мені кажеться, я його ще запиздував з автомата.
The Ukrainians now once again control this location.
Виходь, будеш жити, блядь! Лежить. 200, отут. Подвал якийсь, подвал. Мене нема. Давай.
In the end, the assault group notices someone hiding in a collapsed basement, and without hesitation throws a grenade inside.
Бать її в руку. Все, заходимо. Це вони, сука, звідси кошмарили нас, нахуй.
Давайте закрепляемся, Паш, фиксим, закрепляемся.
Все, тут чисто, дом. Надо в посадку заходити.
It was a very difficult path, but the mission is complete. The village has been returned to the hands of those it rightfully belongs to, and the Ukrainian flag flies here once again. Meanwhile, Ukrainian reconnaissance, using drones to scan the area, spots a Russian large-caliber artillery unit a few kilometers from the captured position. The 2A36 152mm towed gun is designed to suppress and destroy enemy personnel, firepower, and military equipment. It's a powerful artillery piece capable of causing significant trouble for the newly captured positions from the Russians. The Ukrainians decided to use an unconventional tactic, presenting the flamethrower drone. Its capsule contains a chemical compound called thermite. It's nearly impossible to extinguish. Alongside napalm and white phosphorus, thermite is considered an extremely dangerous weapon for covering large areas. Using this method allows them to incinerate bunkers and long-term firing positions down to nothing, as thermite can burn through even concrete. Additionally, the charge can completely destroy any equipment, including tanks. Watch how this drone literally sprays this mixture over enemy positions hidden in a tree line. Part of the artillery crew took cover in a dugout, but even that couldn't save them. Toxic smoke and flames at the entrance left them with no chance of survival. The fire is everywhere, and ammunition is starting to explode. This explosion was captured on camera by a fleeing soldier from the artillery unit. The artillery threat has been eliminated. The target has been destroyed. In the morning, the Russians came back to inspect the extent of their losses. Look at this devastation. The truck and howitzer have been completely burned to ashes. If you want more episodes, please like and leave comments. This will be a great incentive to release a new video. See you soon.